Okay, it's I guess we'll make a start, and um whoever joins can join. Yeah.
Yeah, sure thing.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Basically, what I am, I'm involved in teaching high school children, and I've been involved in teaching well, computer science, and I introduced computer programming to them a couple of years ago. But the thing is that there's no sort of precedence for teaching computer programming, and so I made up my own little strategy of how to actually introduce computer programming to them, and I decided that I'd introduce Python to them, um, as opposed to, say, a block-based language or something, because I figure that they can learn Python. After all, I've been teaching high school students aged 11 to 18. If you look at what they're doing at age 11, they read Shakespeare, they do algebraic equations. In Britain, they wrote essays on advantages and disadvantages of Brexit. So I figure that, like, at the age of 11, they can actually process textual information quite well, and they should be able to cope with Python. So, I was doing introduced it, and it was going quite well. And in fact, I found the 11-year-olds better than the 12, better than 13, better than the 14-year-olds. So from that, my take-home message is that introduce these things early and properly. But then what happened was, obviously, in March, there was the pandemic lockdown. And, overnight, we switched to online teaching. And I understand that the UK was slightly late in its lockdown. And we joined, say, we were, joining at that time 900 million children in over 100 countries, I read somewhere. So this obviously meant that you have to we have to reevaluate how we're actually teaching this computer programming to the children, and whether we could actually do it at all. As such, um, it's a whole sort of reevaluation. And so the first sort of thing was that idea is, can this online medium of instruction complement or even supplement face-to-face in-person practices which have been established and perfected over many years. And then there's a um, book and a saying called "the medium is the message," and it's a phrase coined by one Professor Herbert McLuhan. And it essentially means, in this particular context, that each medium of instruction will have its own signature, and it's accompanied by its own strengths and its weaknesses. So, what we should do, rather than dismiss this online medium out of hand, is to try and discover its strengths and advantages, and to capitalize them. And in due course, we did find these, the great strengths of the online medium. And we found it quite educational. Now, so what did we actually do? Well, the very first thing was actually testing. Now, what's been happening is that, teaching Python, I've been teaching them how to write programs, and they've been writing programs. And every time they, if you're in a class of, say, 15 children, every time they make a mistake, they put their hand up, and you rush towards them to correct their mistakes. And it was thought that, getting them to correct their own mistakes is actually boring, and it will mar their enjoyment of the subject. So the very first thing was to teach them how to correct their own syntax errors. If they're going to get any satisfaction at all, they have to have working programs. So a few very dedicated sessions to the syntax error. And these I I had I had a class of 11 and 12-year-olds. So, I'm wondering how they're going to take this thing. And you know, they seem to be quite into this syntax error. What to I think to adults even is a pain in the neck, but to them, they, you know, they seem to take it all quite on board. And so, you know, somebody wrote, to me, the most interesting part was the mistakes. When we made them, they could have been minor, but they made such a difference. It was interesting to see how that counted, how how intricate a system that really is. And another person, another sort of 12-year-old, sort of said, I really enjoyed, and basically talking about the syntax error here, you know, and this is a program that this person, Harry, age 12, wrote of his own volition. And, you know, he's written we also taught them about functions at this stage, a function which has got playing cards and it randomly selects one. It's made a syntax error, and then, you know, during the evening of his own volition, he corrected it, and in the morning, you know, he's sending his code over to say that it's corrected. So, you know, the take-home message from that is that they're perfectly able at age even 11 and 12 to correct their own syntax error. They don't find it boring. It only in a way needs to be taught, and it can actually be taught online. Then we move on to okay, development. Now, obviously, if they're going to produce anything useful, they're going to have to learn about functions and modules, kind of thing. Would previously thought that this is a tough topic, and you have to obviously be in the classroom to teach this. But nevertheless, you know, want them to do something pretty useful. So, you know, we taught them about functions with, first of all, a worked example of a function, adding two numbers and passing in information, and then getting them to create their own functions as such. And then we also showed them a function of generating sort of random passwords and asking them to um, modify it for their own sort of purposes. Now, actually, they managed to grasp the concept of functions quite quickly. And when thinking about it, why shouldn't they really? Because at the ages of 5, 6, and 7, they read paragraphs, and they're quite used to processing blocks of information. So a function is a block of information. So there's in a way no reason in that sense why they shouldn't. And they were quite enjoying it as well. And one little boy, Alex, aged 11, wrote, I enjoyed learning about functions and how to define them so you could access them at any moment. Then, you know, what else can we do which is meaningful and useful? And so we introduced them to the concept of modeling and simulation, and we could introduce this in the context of the COVID-19 forecasts, which have arisen as a result of modeling and simulation. And we showed them the papers, and there's even code on GitHub, Python code about this as well, to show that the Python language has actually played an important, very role in all of this. And graphs are integral to modeling and simulation. So we showed how you can create graphs. Now, when you create graphs, perhaps there's an extra layer of complexity to this type of function in that we have an external file, and, you know, so they have to now know how two files can work together to produce a graph as such. And, you know, we gave them sort of worked examples of temperatures in different countries, and then we asked them to create their own sort of graph code. And this girl here, Siobhan, age 13, she put in Fibonacci numbers and, you know, managed to produce a plot. So here now we've got a function, we've got extra complexities of an extra external file here, and it's creating a graph. And again, you know, we managed to do this online. Now, as I was teaching online, you don't really know what tools are out there as such, but we discovered, say, online editors, one called REPL, where you can write code, you can share code, you can take over somebody's screen and correct code. And then we're making heavy use of the chat functionality in the Microsoft Teams to share, to pass code to and from each other. So when you wanted to do something, you looked for the tools, and the tools seemed to be appearing. Now, of course, having said that, I think we're very much in the infancy of online teaching and learning, and we're also, we're very much, I think, in version 1. But having said that, what we have, we can do a great deal with. The children seem to enjoy this. One little boy kept saying, "Will you tell my parents?" every time he had a working program. A little girl sort of said, "Oh, I've written a program to generate a passcode, a random passcode of 6 digits." And, there's a lot of discussion that can take place in an online medium, which you can't in a face-to-face classroom as such. So, somebody was asking, what programming language is Excel written in? And because this online medium, every time somebody showed their program, I think everybody was looking up to see what was being done. So the conclusions are accessing the power and the motivating power of online teaching, I think, when properly done, are enormous. And it's a great privilege to partake in this. It's very exciting to take part in a field which is in its infancy and rapidly developing. And, we look forward to the day when everybody can enjoy these experiences. And I think we'll look back on this time and think of it as one of the greatest experience of mankind ever, and also in the field of online learning. I have a YouTube channel called Lil Anonymous, which has got computer science videos and videos on programming as well, a website that I've created for my students, and this is my email address. Yeah. So I've got a talk also tomorrow in Microsoft Room from 1:45 to 2:15, which explains a lot more. Yeah, so what would you like to say? Any comments or any questions or anything?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks very much for presenting. I see that there's one other guy here now. Um, I just wanted to ask, so have you developed this curriculum by yourself? And also, how does it work specifically in the UK? Do they have, I know in South Africa we've got information technology, but it's only available from grades 10 to 12. Is your thing, I mean, you spoke at the very beginning about, teaching them as young as possible. Have you
Okay.
basically developed the system to teach them as young as possible
Yeah,
when
I
it's
mean,
not maybe available?
that's right. I mean, what we have in the UK is that we have a system, there is an intention, let's say, to teach computer science from the kindergarten age. And, there are various documents about this. Now, the documents are written in a very, for want of a better word, loose fashion. So, there's an intention that they should learn how to program, um, and there's a lot of other things in the document as well about what they should learn about technology and computer science as well. Um, so everybody probably does things very differently. There's, in other subjects, maybe say as maths, Latin, English, they've been going for longer. So there's a uniformity about it in how people do this. So, and there's, and because it's so new, probably people do things differently, and there's a lot of flexibility allowed in how you do this. So my school of thought was, I would like them to learn how to program. And a lot of people think that they should, they're too young to learn at age 11, and they start them off at age 15 when they start doing their enroll for their courses. But then I experimented and taught the 11-year-olds, and indeed I found that they are a lot better when you introduce these things than you introduce it at age 15. We come to the conclusion, or rapidly coming to the conclusion, it's like music or learning language or learning sport or something. When you introduce these things younger, they seem to learn these things sort of better. So I have 11 to 18-year-olds on my plate, so I've introduced it at age 11. My guess is that you can introduce it at age 8 as well, and with a few family friends I have actually, on occasion introduced a bit of Python to them when I get over at age 8, and they are very good at it. So yeah, I'm trying to develop this so that it so that it can appeal to we can introduce it a lot younger. And also what we've been finding is that the young children, they do not mind, say, arithmetic examples or hard examples as such. They don't need to be basic, they don't need to necessarily be kept amused with games or something. They're very happy with textual arithmetic examples. So you can start them off, my guess is that if you start them off quite early, very soon they'll be quite proficient, and probably what's currently taught at older age groups can be brought down a lot lower. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty prevalent because the younger age groups, I guess I'd kind of look at it like they're eager to learn. They don't know what they want to learn, but they're very eager to learn and just develop. And also, with the emergence of technology all around us, and kids are playing games 23 hours a day these days, they want to know how these things are developed, or even the grassroots of them. And then maybe at 15 years old, 16 years old, these kids, they maybe have a bit of an ego about it. Just like you were saying, that the younger kids don't necessarily mind a difficult task. Maybe the younger kids, they welcome it, and then the older kids, it might like take a knock to their ego, or they might give up on it quite quickly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you find that the younger children don't easily give up. They've got that something within them, that they want to do things. And also, I think older children, they're pressed, they've got exams, they have to do well. Whereas in some sense, I found that nobody is expecting anything from the 11-year-olds, and because they're left alone, they produce an awful lot. In fact, more than the 15-year-olds. Somehow, that lack of expectation, that lack of pressure works very much in their favor, where they do a lot more. I see other people. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go on.
I was just going to say, I think it's a completely separate discussion, but the impact that exams make, and tests and assignments, has a huge impact on it. Because when they're just doing it for fun, for their interest, they're doing it because they want to, as opposed to having to do it to get into university or to pass the year or whatnot.
I mean, yeah. I mean, there are children aged 12 and 13, off their own back, they are doing projects as well. Um, we're talking about Python here, but I had one student who's two students, in fact, they do a lot of coding of their own back in, say, C# to produce animations and things. And yeah, they have the time maybe, or the freedom or whatever, to actually do that on the interests. Oh. Can the others hear me too? I can see someone called Francesco, Ingo, Peter. Is there anything you guys want to say too? Okay, you're all on mute. Yeah.
Hello?
Hello, yes?
Yeah, I unmuted myself now. Yes, it's very interesting to listen to. It's sort of not my regular domain, but I'm a little bit interested in what young peoples are doing and have some thoughts about it. So it's very interesting to hear about your experiences and what what really appeals to young people nowadays and the approaches you take. So thank you for this presentation. I don't have so much to add. I have some thoughts on my own, but it's very interesting to learn more about it. So,
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Anyone else? Any questions or anything?
Hi, I'm Francesca. Sorry, I've just come, so I lost the most part of your presentation. Could you please resume briefly the core of the project, please?
Yeah, basically, I'm involved in teaching high school children computer science and in the UK, and I introduced Python to them a couple of years ago, and I'm teaching 11 to 18, and I found that, well, the 11-year-olds are the best than the 12, 13, 14, and this was going okay until the lockdown, which happened in March, and so we had to rethink, can we actually continue even with this teaching of their Python? Do we have to be there in person, or what should we do really? So we decided to actually continue and see actually what emerges. The first thing, if you're teaching online, the first thing it was decided before, if they have mistakes or anything, you as a teacher in an in-person classroom, go over to their terminal and correct it. So in order for them to enjoy the subject or anything, they have to know how to correct their mistakes. So therefore, the first thing we taught them was how to correct syntax errors. Now, this was done apologetically, thinking that it would be rather boring or anything, but a few dedicated sessions, they seem to be taking this in. And this is what they wrote, when somebody said to me the most interesting parts was the mistakes. Another boy here, he wrote this program off his own back, to choose a random card here. And, there's a syntax error, as he writes, and he corrected it and he sent it in. So they seem to embrace it, this concept, what, maybe people think of as boring and awful. They seem to be okay with it. Then sort of development, if we're going to do anything useful, they really need to know about functions and modules. Could you do this over the internet? Is it, previously I thought it's quite hard and you have to be there on purpose. But we explained it. They seem to take it on board and produce things as well. And, here's a function by a 12-year-old to generate a random password. If you think, well, if I thought about it really, at the ages of 5, 6, and 7, they read, and they read paragraphs. So they're used to processing information in blocks. So there is no real reason why they can't understand functions and understand them quite easily. And thirdly, we introduced some modeling and simulation here. And some modeling and a bit of simulation. And can they grasp the concept of an external file to produce graphs? Is it going to be too hard to explain for them? But they managed, and here somebody's produced a Fibonacci sequence and they've done this here. So the conclusions we made was that accessing the power and motivating power of online teaching, when it's properly done, is enormous, and it's a great privilege to partake in it. And I think it's very much in its infancy. We discovered a number of tools like REPL, where you can screen share, and you can screen share and you know, take over people's code. We made heavy use of the chat functionality in Microsoft Teams and things, but I think it is version 1 and it has a long way to go. I have a YouTube channel if anyone's interested, Lil Anonymous, a website and an email address. Yeah, so that's a synopsis.
Okay, thank you very much. Really interesting. But so if I understood, Python has been taught in a certain sense, so some basics, commands and so on, to 11 youngsters. Is it right?
That's right. Yes, yes.
And did you find that more younger people learned it better than older?
Yes, you found that younger people learn better than older people. They seem to have an intuitive grasp of these concepts, maybe like learning languages and music.
Oh, great.